In some circle of the COVID-19 pandemic, the day smoke from the holiday farm fire cleared, and S.G. Ellerhoff found himself masked behind Tsunami's drink bar, cleaning used books. 3 years a bookstore clerk and an associate editor for Tsunami Books, he holds a Ph.D. from the School of English at Trinity College, Dublin. Dr. Steve, we call him. He has authored and edited short stories, academic articles, and books of fiction, literary criticism, and natural history. His next book, a monograph, is Jung and the Mythology of Star Wars. Almost done. More about this published work can be found at sgellerhoff.com. Let's have a hand for Steve Ellerhoff.
Thanks, Bose. All right, thank you all for being here. And I just wanted to say, too, that this anthology is symptomatic of profound literary creativity and talent and craft in our community. It's a pleasure to be involved in this in any capacity, so thank you all. I'm going to read an excerpt from actually. The Fox and the Hedgehog is an excerpt from an unpublished novel called The Hedgehog's Dilemma. And there are 3 things I just want you to know going in. First, you're going to notice this seems like it's a bit like Ireland. This is not Ireland. My friends in Ireland we'll see what they think of this. But they would say, that's not very Irish. But it seems kind of Irish. It's fantasy. Another thing is that in this world, some people grow up and they take on animal qualities. They kind of become like animals. Not everybody. Some people just grow up and they're people. And then other people grow up and they're people, but they're also animals. So the 2 main characters here are the hedgehog. His name is Harrison Wimage, and he is terribly heartbroken. And then his best friend is a fox. His name is Shitter, which is S-C-H-I-D-D-E-R. Shitter the fox. And the best thing he can think to do for his heartbroken friend is to take him down to the pub. Somehow, Shitter was already down the other end of the bar by the fireplace, holding court with 4 hardened men. I smelt a hateful aroma 3 pints ago when announced, and I says, "Dear man, Shitter's on his way, lads." You're very good, Cole," the fox said, smacking him in the side with the wispy tip of his brush. "Oi, mind your mate if I can tell you, quar." Lads, the fox yapped. "I want to introduce you to me mate, Wimage. Wimage, get your arse over here." He tremored in their direction, which they noticed. The confident 2, both going gray, but only one bearded, were brothers, Poopdeck and Keenan. Harrison never would have guessed them kin, their features more dissimilar than alike. Poopdeck had a tightness about him, eyes and mouth cinched. Keenan was soft-eyed and serene. Then there was Shane, a man with a great height about him. Playing darts alone, he eyed Shitter and now Harrison between throws as if they weren't worth the trouble. Colm, the erratic one, was greased in sweat and crimson with drink. His inebriated aggression posed its biggest threat to his own safety. During introductions, Shitter had to grab his shirt sleeves to save him from falling rear first into the fireplace. "What's your trade?" asked Shane, squaring off with the board and pitching another dart. "He's a paper stainer," Shitter said, swiping the darts off the board. "Pictures like?" Keenan asked. "Illumination, illustration, and calligraphics," the hedgehog explained. They quaffed their pints and smoked their cigarillos Harrison hid behind his overbite. He was mixed up with your one up the tower down the coast, Shitter explained, chewing a dart like a toothpick. Feckin' which fecked him out for that spooky twat, Glibieri Delgado. Remember, he came in here that one time. He changed his accent. Asking for a bottle of opium and 2 pails of shandy for my thirsty steed. Feck's sake. That was your man who had trouble with the jacks, said the bartender. What a prick. Shitter about-faced and casually underhanded the darts from the waist, one at a time, in upward arcs at the board. 2 red bullseyes and a green outer bowl. Good show, Shane muttered, stepping to the board and taking the darts for his turn. Where'd you learn how to do that? Harrison gawped. Underhanded, even. Whammage, he said, gripping the soft of the hedgehog's shoulder. Hang around establishments like this for the drinking, sure. You pick up a few things. Shithead, the old man tending bar called over. He set down 2 fresh pints. Thanks, Paul Sr. The fox handed over some coins and put one of the dark, ruby pints in Harrison's paws. Get that into you now. The stout will plenish your iron and humors. Even me missus has to admit that. It's cilantro. He tipped his own pint and took a 3-gulp draft that left foam along his snout. Harrison gripped the cold glass, heavy in his shaky paws. He sniffed twice at the domed head, dipped the tip of his tongue, and, thirst upstaging moderation, tossed it into his mouth. Full, creamy, the beer hit the back of his throat with the most satisfying of quenchings. He tasted earth in the roasted barley, could feel it coating the dry furrows of his shriveled stomach, unfolding the organ, filling it smoothly. And while the stout did nothing to warm his insides, it did wake him to his immediate needs, which were met in the form of a sweet, surging second pint, also on Shitter. Bearded Keenan took pity on his broken heart with a 3rd pint, offering up his own mysterious poetry of insight on the subject of heartbreak. There's no fish without the river. Whatever that meant. The fox had vanished to make his rounds, seeing to others who'd not been there when they arrived. Why did they call this place Jack Dawes? Harrison asked, thinking he was asking Keenan, whom he thought was on his right. The answer came from his left. "'Cause this was Jack's pub," said an elder toad, all speckled in freckles. "Now he's stuffed in the corner, so he is, as per his dying wish." Harrison turned and peered into the dim corner, finding there, sure enough, the black shape of a man-sized jackdaw, clear blue glass eyes twinkling. Having never in his life encountered anybody mummified through taxidermy, his quills shivered up and down his hunched back. "'S what he wanted," the toad said. "'S what he got. How many in death can say as much?" Natterjack, that's what the old toad said his name was, asked what brought him to the bar, and he looked for the fox to point to him, but not finding him, again, blamed heartbreak. Not missing a beat, the old-timer told Harrison all about a woman he was having an affair with in the Big Smoke more than 40 years earlier. "In them days, I was bald as I am this day, and despite being a toad, I wore a toupee, so I did. I was romancing your one with this cap of brown curls atop me head, and me thinking she didn't know they were, enhanced. Me missus back home, she knew. I knew well enough she knew, so I did, for all the attention she gave me for being a hairless toad. But there I was, in another city, with another woman, and we strolling along the quays one morn after working all night. We stopped. I remember like we're still there on Belfry Bridge, overlooking the river. And she asking Natterjack, she asked, "Why'd you wear that thing?" And she took it right off and chucked it into the drink, where it sunk like a stunned rat. His great gold eyes brimmed wet. "Oh, how I love my Anne, more'n I ever could love me own Maureen, and both of them dead now." The poor old toad fell to weeping on his stool. Ah, grand, the old frog's so pissed he's crying. Shitter suddenly at his side. Natterjack's pebbly face glistened with tracks streaming from his bulging eyes. I wouldn't be fond of crying, but I means it, every tear. So I does, so I does. By now, it was unclear how many pints Harrison had indulged, likely just the 3 he could recall. And while he felt sorry for his new friend's grief, he was all too aware of his own and relieved by Shitter's return. Things had picked up since arriving, a few more patrons wandering around, including a quite tall server lady dressed in plain linens without, he couldn't help noticing, a corset beneath. Taking a shine to Dimphna, are ya? Already on to the next woman, that's it. No? No. Dimphna, he yapped. She came right over with a tray of empty glasses. Harrison shrank, his orbicularis muscle twitching. Aye, wee Shitter! She wrapped her free arm down around the fox, and he rubbed his dark tufted cheek into her bosoms with shut eyes and lolling tongue, the expression exaggerated for Harrison's benefit. She spread her upper lip in a grin that lined parallel to her fringe, cut straight just over her eyes. You come back for me to change your nappy, did ya? Ooh, change my nappy, change my nappy. Shitter pleaded, chin to breast with eyes looking up at her. I only done a piss for you this time. The two of them heaved, laughing, leaving Harrison to wonder. Natterjack sniffled. Whammage, this is Dimphna, me old wet nurse from when I was just a teat-sucking kit. You lying fox, she brayed. You never had a suck off these. Maybe not, but I can't tell you how many times I've brung myself off thinking about it. Dirty, dirty fecker. She grabbed his scruff and gave him 2 hard shakes. I used to look after him, she explained, when his parents needed a break. You can imagine, I'm sure. Making acquaintances, she too asked what he'd like to drink. Picking up on the fact that he hadn't eaten, Shitter ordered him a ham and cheese toastie and a side of dried prawns. He ordered the same for himself, promising they could get an order of boxties on their way out. They were still hungry. A pat on the belly and the fox was gone again. Dimphna was gone, taking care of the order. Even Natterjack had left the next stool. Having a look around, there the old boy was, turning a spry slipjig on the flagstones. The trousered toad cut a spirited figure, smacking his hands for the odd downbeat clap to the trad session Harrison had missed starting. There was a fellow on guitar without any hair up on top and a white mustache of impressive dimensions. A ginger fiddler with all the embellishments of a player who'd spent a night's month with the good people, and a girl, no older than 10, with black plaits pinned in a crown, tooting a tin whistle just as natural as breathing. They were well into it, not at all dependent on anyone taking notice. He sat and swayed, not with rhythm, but with sorrow. The tune, sprightly, provided no protection. His shame for being so very wrong about how the solar witch felt about him left him stumped. Stupid. The hedgehog was verging when Dimphna returned with a pint of ale, a steaming ham and cheese toastie, and pile of crunchy prawns on the side. She asked what was wrong, listened as she tended to the particulars of making sure his sandwich got a slathering of mustard, a nurse in barmaid's dress, her pity at his haltingly narrated heartbreak, both professional and kind. She even knew when and how to flirt with him. Aren't you just the sweetest thing? She set one half of his toastie perpendicular atop the other. I'd just love to corrupt you. Well, he said. Dimphna scratched his furry cheek. Now you just get stuck into that toastie now, you starved darling. You don't want to be emancipated. He knew